people from abroad want to come and sell you products and set up factories and invest in your country and stuff like that. Okay. And from 2008, how long do you think is going to take us as a country to reach $2 trillion? Now you think that why does it matter to me? I'm an engineer or I'm a scientist, right? Why does this matter to me? Right, but I'll come to that. How long will it take us to become a $2 trillion economy? Any volunteers here? Not the faculty. Any volunteers? Don't worry about being wrong, because it will just illustrate to us how we think. 2 decades is one volunteer. Then 8 years. Who's that? Okay. Faculty? No. Anyway, but you can be wrong. Okay. Who else? Huh? 2014. Okay. Isn't he crazy a bit? 2014. Next year. Okay. Who else? Someone more reasonable and sane.
12 years.
Pardon? 12 years. Okay, the answer is 2014. Okay, but what is the meaning of a $2 trillion economy? The meaning of a $2 trillion economy is what you see around you. Did you ever anticipate there would be so many malls in every mohalla, if you like, nowadays? Small towns, right? Small towns having malls, right? Now Bhopal and Indore and Jaipur and all have become tier 1 almost, right? This Sholapur and the smaller cities and stuff like that. Surat is not a small town anymore. Its population is 2 million almost. Everybody is getting these huge malls and people seem to have lots of money to spend. My driver is getting paid 10,000 rupees a month, right? Everybody is buying expensive. I don't know who is able to afford these 45,000 rupee iPhone 5s, but I see front page newspaper ads on them, right? So people seem to have money in their pockets, and when they have money in their pockets, they are going to think very different from how our parents used to think. Can you ever think of your parent buying a phone like that, 45,000 rupees ka phone, right? So what is happening around you? It means that the reality that your parents have in their head about how to be and how to transact with the world does not really apply to the world. India has been artificially behind the rest of the world in the first 60 years of its existence. The way that you used to survive or live your life at that time does not apply to how we can live our lives now. Right? We can live a much more global and international kind of existence with parity in salaries and stuff like this now. It's a very different place. When I came back in when was it? 91, right? A PhD from abroad was worth not more than about 10,000 rupees a month. Right? My own PhD student leaves our hands 2 years ago, goes and joins a job in Synopsys, and they're getting a package of about 18 lakhs a year. So something dramatic has happened, especially in the last 5 to 6 years. So the rules that applied to us, which our parents tell us about, don't apply anymore. Some students still come to me that my father wants me to take a government job. And he's a brilliant guy who can just go in to a multinational company and do anything he likes. But government job, that government job thing doesn't apply anymore. Right? Apart from a few jobs perhaps. Right? Like ours, for instance. Anyway, that's another story. Something else that comes out of this all, this I've just given for point of interest, how mobile phones have grown. Right, which is another story. It shows that when you unfetter the imagination and the markets, something very magical happens. Right? People just kind of fill in all those gaps which are there. So when you move from a command economy, from a socialist economy that we used to be in the past, to a demand-driven economy in a very unfettered way, this is the kind of growth that you find. Right? In my childhood, a telephone, the black bakelite kind of stuff which used to remain in the side of the house, was like an heirloom. I would pass it on to my kids, I would feel, at that time. very difficult to get, 10 years of waiting list and stuff like that. You don't get it. As soon as you open up the markets, this is what happens. And increasingly we are being forced to open up the markets more and more and more. Foreign direct investment and all that, that's what's actually happening around. So what I'm saying is that there's a very different game that is being played out there now, which you better wake up to. And which your elders haven't a clue about how to play, typically. Right? You are better clued up with the internet as your Sarathi, if you like. Trying to find out what is happening. My 13-year-old daughter wants to get a BlackBerry Curve, and she tells me, I've done my research and stuff like that, and Dad, this and this are the options, and this and this is why. I'll help you. I won't go for 9360, I'll go for 9220. It's cheaper by 5,000 rupees, and it's only 10,000 rupees. Right? So there's a totally new generation out there. Okay? So I'm saying that means that there's a new market brewing out there. A new market. With an appetite for new products. The kinds of which perhaps didn't exist in the West. And who will products? Not the Westerners, because they don't know our problems. So it's us who will have to build these products. And unfortunately, we've been kind of disabled by an education system in which we are just taught to become clerks, basically. Right? It's reminiscent of a British Empire mode of thinking where you want a lot of clerks and mazdurs basically to push pens. So we teach them how to learn things and spew it out and not create. Right? So there needs to be a very strong, different change in how we sort of contact these opportunities which are arising to us by even re-engineering the education system. And if we don't do it, we hope that you will be able to do it even at this age. And it's already happening. Right? Many kids don't depend on the classroom, they depend on the internet. You have so many lectures out there. Khan Academy is there, which is brilliant. You got Coursera, you got the MIT lectures, IIT has NPTEL and so on. Colleagues of mine at IIT Madras, for instance, in nuclear physics or whatever, Professor Mangala Sundar, for instance, he doesn't teach a class. He says, go and look at my lectures offline. We'll come in class and have a discussion. That's how the classroom is changing. Right? And if teachers are not willing to change, the change is happening anyway. Right? So it's a very new environment. So all I want to say is that there's something out there which is happening, premised by things like sustainability, which let us think in a different way. So if you have a dream, this is the time to envision that dream and make things happen. And chances are that you will succeed. Because something has not worked out in the past, doesn't mean that it will not work out in the future. Because the future is a very different reality with a very different set of constraints from what has been in the past. And the future now has to take something else into account. It has to take sustainability into account. And this is what this talk is all about. So if that one message that you got, just unfetter your minds, be sensitive to the reality out there. That is really the message of this talk today. Right? And everything else will just harp on the same theme and illustrate this main message. Okay? And one thing which is very sad in this country at the moment is that we are net consumers of technology. Even open source, for instance, is very sad. We are not contributing to open source, we are consuming what others have created. Not because we can't contribute, because we don't believe we can contribute. Okay, but that also is changing now. Okay? So we should be net producers, and we are limited only by our imagination. This is something as early as, I remember this was 94. A friend of mine, LC Singh, who was the head of marketing in TCS, started up a new company in Pune. He says, Kavi, things have changed. Things are so different now. Right? Money is not made by money anymore. Money is made by ideas. Right? This is quite coming from a software guy, but that's where it is. You're just limited by your imagination. It is not because your dad was Dhirubhai Ambani or something that you are guaranteed that you can make money now, right? You can be anybody, right? And you can dream up an idea and you can come up with a wonderful start of a company, and that's happening increasingly. Okay. This is just patents as a measure of the intellectual output of a country. This is an interesting slide that I found. Academics say that India has the potential to create great products, but it is not yet doing so. India has granted about half as many American patents for inventions as Israel and China. Right? Israel, a small country, right in the middle of the Middle East. And here's this 1.2 billion elephant, which is just contributing a trickle. And it's contributing a trickle because we don't have enough self-confidence in ourselves to do things. But that is changing. And you are the generation which is going to change it, even more than us. Okay, because you don't have the baggage of legacy as much as we used to have. Okay, so this is, for instance, is the lines which correspond to Israel. This is China and this is India here. I have a better slide here. I took it from the US Patent Office data last night. Okay, China, Israel, India. Right, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. It's not growing fast enough. Right, this needs to grow at a much faster pace. Right, and look at Israel is growing at a steady pace. It's a small country where the population is not increasing that much. And this is China. Look at the pace of growth here. It's diverging from this. Right. Here's another thing. Research and development as an expenditure as a percentage of GDP. Right. There was data only until 2008 or 2007 in the case of India, right? So it's a bit incomplete, but this shows you what's happening. India is, right, as a percent of GDP is about less than 1%, about 0.7%, right? And this is China, which is a much bigger economy, which is about 1.5% and growing, right? And look at Israel. As a 4.5% of GDP goes into research and development, which is why our entire defense industry nowadays is running on Israeli hardware, almost. And the Israeli lobby is one of the strongest in the defense ministry at the moment. Defense, agriculture, all the important things that matter, we are importing a hell of a lot of technology from them. And what does Israel have? It doesn't have any great resources and stuff like that. They have a can-do attitude. They are very much like us actually, but they have a different mindset, right? Very inventive, very kind of pushy, mindset. Quite impressive. Okay? And so that tells you why we need to change. And one of the envelopes that we need to take care of is the whole notion of sustainability. I'm going to keep my watch out here to make sure I don't overshoot too much. Okay? Sustainability is a basis for growth. I don't know if you were told this by Professor Kale when he came last week, but a very important lesson to me was the value of a tree. Okay, the tree which we take for granted so much. How much of the economic value of a tree do we harvest when we cut down a tree? Say for the wood or the timber or whatever. How much of the economic value of that tree do we harvest? So the tree, and then you have a root system. Some people even say, there are some interesting TED Talks about there being a mother tree in a forest, which is like the mother of all the trees, and they're all interconnected, the root systems and stuff like that. And which makes you think that Avatar was actually a true story, about how forests and trees are. Okay. And how much of the value do we harvest by cutting the tree as opposed to if you leave it? Any volunteers here? What percentage of the value do we harvest when we cut down a tree? Any volunteers? Come on, I don't mind if you're wrong. It just illustrates the way we think. Fine, average. It can be sandalwood, it can be teak, mahogany, it can be a jungly tree, whatever, right? The wood. Okay, but so 100 kilos wood you said, right? Okay, and how much would that be? Few tens of thousands. Okay, so what percentage would that be? 10%? of the value of the tree. What else? What are the numbers come up here? No, this just shows you how much we are connected with the reality of natural resources and stuff like that. 10% is an interesting number. Anybody else? More than 50%. 50. Okay. 50%. That's good. Anybody else? So what could the resources that we get from a tree be? Wood is one. Fruit. Oxygen. Oxygen, remember, oxygen in its entire lifetime, which is about 80, 90, 100 years. Okay. What else? Paper. That's the wood again. Medicines. Topsoil. Yes. Leaves dropping and so on. What else? Shadow. Shade. Shade means cooling effect is there. Then there's transpiration with which it cools the air even more. So there's air conditioning effect. You come to IIT Bombay, the temperature drops 4 degrees as soon as you enter the campus. Right? If you had to do the same thing with ACs, it would cost you much more. What else? Pollution absorber. What else? Okay, so the numbers that I saw actually jolted me a bit. Okay. 0.3% of the value. This was in 2008, I think, that I last looked at these numbers, but it's worth looking at even now. 97.7% of its value as a natural asset is lost, right? And the collateral value of a tree is approximately 26 lakhs in 2008 numbers, which must be about double this. Let's say about 500 crore is the actual value of that tree in terms of the services that it gives us, right? Reservoirs of biodiversity with associated banks of genetic material. This has become very important. Roots, etc. are a filter for clean water. Reduces energy costs for homeowners. Keeps homes cool in summer and warm in winter. Increases property value. Right? Nobody thought of that. Right? How many of you are buying a place in Indiabul Greens or in this Mulund place, right? Ranwal Greens and stuff like that. Okay. Home to wildlife. More important, sink for carbon dioxide, and it also generates oxygen. You'll see that in all the oilseed mills which are there in villages, they have it. They have a certain tree which is planted around them with a yellow-colored flower. I can't remember what that tree is called. Any idea? These ghani mills and all that. They say that if this tree is planted, the oxygen can keep on going a long time without getting exhausted. Right? So what's happening is that this tree is generating a lot of oxygen, which keep these oxygen going. Right? And it checks soil erosion. So these are very stunning numbers. And when you think of afforestation, right, something very frightening is happening in the long term, which people don't realize. It's like you have a nice big house, a wooden house, right, and to make money, uska lakda bech diya. Right? Where that house could be a center of lots of economic activity and community and social activity and stuff like that. A lot of value is being created by the house, by its existence. On the other hand, you take it, you sell the wood, and that's the end of the story. That's the end for that factory, if you like. So each tree loss means that. Okay, that is one big knock. And climate change risk, I won't go into details of this, but 1 ton of CO2 causes damage worth $185, but emissions can be cut at the rate of $25 a ton. But this is more important, to fix it, spend 1% GDP now, or fix the damage at 10% GDP, right? And in Delhi, 2020 is going to be the year without winter, right? If you read in these various climate change journals. Bombay today, I just saw, 40 degrees. 20% humidity. What is happening? What's going to happen to the crops I want to grow in this kind of situation? These kind of shocks which are happening. Okay. India's purported to lose 30% of agricultural output by 2030. Even if it's half that, it's a hell of a lot, especially when a population is growing. Right? Water is going to be a problem. In this day, today's Times of India, there's an article on the front page on all these issues about how water wars are going to happen in Maharashtra because there's a shortage of water. Glaciers, which is the source of the Ganga, are going to disappear in 40 years. There's going to be a flood and then dryness. Just imagine in a place like UP, where you don't have a Ganga running through anymore. Right? What is the meaning of that? Right? Bombay is going to have many more people, I suspect, then. Okay? 2030, 30% of existing flora and fauna are extinct, and food crisis, 0.5 degree rise in temperature results in 17% fall in wheat production. In fact, this morning, again an article on fish and fisheries, right? A lot of the fish that is being caught in the coastal waters around Maharashtra are not available anymore because temperatures are changing. Okay. Then you have Kyoto Protocol. I won't go into all this, but the important part of this slide is here, where US is consuming, or rather 21 times as much energy as us at the moment. 21 times as much energy as us. That is to sustain the United States way of life. Right? Where happiness and the quality of life is premised on consumption and producing a lot of waste and consuming a lot of energy. Right? Now, it doesn't need more than a child to realize that if 1.2 billion people define quality of life in the same terms as this, what will happen not only to this country but to the planet. Right? So, this is the problem that you guys have to solve. Okay? You can't escape from this. If you solve these problems, you will do well, you'll get a great job, you'll make lots of money. But if you just go away as business as usual, oh, sir has given me a problem, I must solve this problem, and nobody's really interested in the problem after a few years and stuff like that, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping the community. So this is an urge that there are lots of important problems that need to be solved out there, relevant problems, where if you oriented yourself in some way towards solving a part of that, not only will you be successful, but you will be helping not only the country but the world also, right, by getting some interesting answers out. Okay? And huge opportunities. Clean technology market in 2007 was 40 billion, now it's 170 billion. 90% of consumers in UK want climate-friendly technology. Prius is an example. It's the third best-selling car in the world, right? It's a hybrid car, means petrol plus electric, and 1 million sales last year. And Mahindra Reva, its biggest market is the UK, where the government is giving it £1,000 subsidy, no congestion tax, and free parking and battery charging in the city of London. Right? This is where the world is going. Right? So we need to adopt or create more such technology. Okay? And sustainable agriculture. I won't go into this, right? But we have a little project at IIT Bombay where, again, this is an idea. We said that the city of Bombay, for instance, vegetables have become very expensive, isn't it? Okay. But if you look at how we are consuming vegetables, this will give you an idea of how to think maybe, how to formulate a problem which can make an interesting research topic or a potential of building technology also. Okay. Vegetable comes 100 kilometers outside the city. By the time it reaches you, 30% of the cost of vegetables is actually the cost of diesel. You consume the vegetables and you throw away 1/3 of the vegetables, and again you transport it 30 to 100 kilometers out and invest in real estate, which is very expensive, and dump it there and create a problem. So you've turned something into waste. Now we thought, why not if you convert waste into something useful? Because if you look at it in nature, there is no waste. The waste of one system is always the input of another system. So why don't we mimic that in order to bring our energy cost as a society much lower? Okay. We've been doing it for a long time, mainly out of garibi, right? But can we institutionalize this? Like, for instance, in our old joint families and all that, right? The elder kids' clothes are worn by the next and the next and the next. That's a very frugal way of spending energy. Even now, sometimes I ask myself, do I need to wash this kurta or trouser or whatever it is? Do I have to? If I have to, then I'll do it, right? Don't unnecessarily bung things into the washing machine and stuff like that, okay? And waste water and energy and so on. Okay. So we thought, people have been trying to convert waste into compost. And then what do you do with compost in a place like Bombay? There's all concrete. And that creates a new problem. So we thought, why not have this idea where we have greenhouses, right, in all your vacant lots and tops of buildings and stuff like that. And you convert this compost into vegetables in the greenhouses. And that will give us an interesting place to deploy technology, embedded systems for instance, right? Like, people don't look at this problem in the context of the rural areas because they say labor is cheap. But in a place like a city, labor is very expensive, right? So it's worth putting technology into a greenhouse because of the value of the product that you're creating inside a city is much higher, right? And so, if you can put technology, why not put robots? Why don't you think of robots which can go and tend to the greenhouse? So you don't have to have a guy, who looks after 10 buildings. You can have robots all over the place, and there's one chap at a console who's managing this entire plantation. And we thought, why not many, many greenhouses, right? So with that kernel of an idea, we're actually designing an experimental platform at IIT Bombay. So this is how you can also, I invite you to think of ideas like that with interesting problems which you might solve, which, if they come to fruition in the right way, can be a fantastic technology or product or create markets and services that don't exist right now. Because they don't exist right now is a damn good reason to do it. Many people say, koi nahi kharidega, kisi ne nahi kiya hai, tumme kya hai, tum kar sakte ho, right? Forget about these people. Just go by the facts wherever you can. Okay? Sustainable habitation. So many cities are coming up and stuff like that. Same things apply there. How do you make green buildings but closed loop cities which are independent of the grid, ideally, right? Which process their own waste and they have wind and solar and stuff like that and create the energy. Ideally, you should not need air conditioning even if you design the buildings nicely. Put lots of trees on the campus. Not only will you have a healthy life, but your property will appreciate much better, right? And you'll have a much better... So we are trying to say that turn around the way that you're thinking of urbanizing the country. 70% of the people in this country are living in the villages now. It is anticipated that in 30-40 years' time, only 20% will be there in the villages. So India is going to urbanize much more than we are seeing at the moment. So can we plan these new urban centers differently and start thinking about the kind of technology that we need? Okay. Now, so set the problem area. I'll talk just a little bit about the way that I've tried to turn this thinking into practice in our own research. This is something which shows you embedded systems are essentially computers where you don't see any computers, right? They are buried inside a machine, right? So you have embedded systems and all these things. These are all placeholders for areas where they can be deployed. Can you think of anything here which might not need an embedded system?